always believed there were certain lines a man never had to imagine crossing. One of them was this: the day I found out my ex-girlfriend had chosen my father. Not just chosen him, moved into his orbit, sat at his table, drank from his glass, listened to his stories about me like I was some failed investment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started with a silence. Her name was Claire. We had been together 3 years, 3 solid, ordinary, predictable years. Apartment lease, shared streaming accounts, Sunday grocery runs. The kind of life that isn't glamorous but feels stable, like a house built with careful hands. Then one night she said, "I think we've grown apart." I remember the kitchen light flickering above us. I remember the hum of the refrigerator. I remember the way she didn't look at me when she said it. I didn't beg. That surprised her. I could see it. She expected drama. I gave her stillness. "Okay," I said. That word felt like swallowing glass. She packed within a week. Boxes labeled in her neat handwriting. Books. Winter clothes. Misk. The last one made me laugh quietly, as if 3 years could fit inside something labeled miscellaneous. When she left, the apartment echoed. I thought that was the worst of it. For 2 weeks, I kept busy. Gym, work, late nights at the office. I told myself this was growth, reinvention, a clean break. Then my father called. He never calls casually. Growing up, phone calls from him meant instruction or criticism, not conversation. "Son," he said, his voice unusually measured. "You should come by Sunday. Dinner." I almost declined, but habit is a strong chain. Sunday evening, I drove to the house I grew up in. Same white siding, same trimmed hedges, same porch light that had burned every night of my childhood. Inside, something felt different, a new perfume in the air. I heard laughter from the kitchen, her laugh. My body reacted before my mind did, a tightening in my chest, a cold rush in my ears. I stepped into the doorway. Claire stood by the counter holding a wine glass. My father stood beside her, closer than necessary, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. The room went silent. Her eyes met mine first. Shock. Then something else. Not shame. Not exactly. My father cleared his throat. "I was going to tell you," he said. "Tell me." As if this were a scheduling conflict. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone observing from outside his own body. Claire looked down. My father answered. "A few weeks." A few weeks. We had broken up 2 weeks ago, so either time was elastic, or truth was. I felt heat rising behind my eyes, but I refused to let it spill. Not there. Not in front of him. "This is inappropriate," I said quietly. My father's jaw tightened. "You and Claire are adults. You ended things." "You waited," I said. "At least wait." Claire finally spoke. "We didn't plan this." That sentence landed heavier than any confession, because if they didn't plan it, it meant it happened naturally, easily. I looked at him, the man who taught me how to shave, how to throw a ball, how to be a man. He couldn't meet my eyes now, and that's when I understood something important. This wasn't just about her. This was about him stepping into my life and rearranging it like furniture he thought didn't belong to me. I left without eating. The air outside felt sharper, like winter had arrived early. In my car, I sat with both hands gripping the steering wheel. My reflection in the windshield looked older than 42. I didn't cry. I felt something colder. A fracture. Over the next days, word spread quietly through extended family. My aunt called, pretending she just wanted to check in. My cousin sent a vague text about staying strong. The narrative was forming without me. She and him connected after the breakup. It's unconventional, but love is complicated. You can't control who people fall for. No one said the word betrayal, so I did. When my father came to my apartment unannounced that Wednesday evening, I knew this wasn't over. He stood in the hallway like he still owned access to my life. "We need to talk," he said. And in that moment, I realized something with absolute clarity. This wasn't going to be a conversation. This was going to be a war. Not with shouting, not with fists, but with distance, with silence, with the careful dismantling of a relationship that had shaped me since childhood. And I was ready to begin. The next morning, my phone was heavier than usual. I kept picking it up, putting it down, opening messages just to stare at nothing. Like my thumbs were looking for a switch that could rewind time. At work, I tried to act normal. I sat through a meeting about quarterly projections and nodded at the right moments, but all I could hear was the clink of my father's wine glass. All I could see was his hand at the small of her back, casual, familiar, like a habit. On my lunch break, I drove to a parking lot behind a grocery store and just sat there with the engine off. That's where the first message came. From Claire, "Can we talk?" 2 weeks ago, she couldn't look me in the eye long enough to end it properly. Now she wanted a conversation like we were negotiating a return policy. I typed back, "No." The word felt clean, sharp, like a door closing. She didn't reply right away, and for a moment I thought maybe that would be it. Maybe she would finally take the hint that my life wasn't her waiting room. Then my father called again. Not a text, not a voicemail. A call because he likes control in real time. I let it ring until the screen went dark. Then he called again. I answered on the third ring because the part of me that still grew up under his roof hadn't learned how to ignore him completely. "What is this?" he asked. I almost laughed. The nerve of him to sound offended. "It's me saying no," I replied. A breath on his end, slow and practiced. He was choosing his words like he always did, as if life was a courtroom and he was never caught without a brief. "You're acting like a child," he said. There it was. The old familiar move. Shrink me. Reduce me. Make my pain look like immaturity. "I walked into your kitchen," I said, my voice low, "and saw my past standing next to you like it belonged there. You ended it with her. You're my father." Silence, then, "People start new chapters." I stared through the windshield at nothing, feeling my stomach go tight. "You don't start a new chapter by tearing pages out of someone else's book," I said. He sighed, like I was exhausting him, like I was an inconvenience to his evening plans. "Come over," he said. "We'll talk like men." That phrase hit me like a flashback. I'd heard it after I wrecked my car at 19, after I got into trouble at 23, after I failed a class in college and he treated it like a moral weakness. Talk like men. Meaning, I listen, he lectures, and I leave with shame in my pocket. "I'm not coming over," I said. "You're going to regret making this bigger than it is." Bigger. As if it were a minor misunderstanding. As if I'd walked in and found them reorganizing his pantry. "I didn't make it bigger," I said. "You did." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear, something else. A pressure building behind my ribs. Like my body didn't know where to put the feeling, so it turned it into motion. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city breathe through the windows. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them again. The kitchen, the light, the wine, her laugh cutting through the air like she had every right to be happy. Around 2 a.m., I opened my laptop and started scrolling through old photos. Not because I wanted to miss her, because I wanted evidence. There were pictures of my father at my birthday dinners, my graduation, holidays, and there she was in the background of some of them, smiling politely, arm around my waist, as if she'd always belonged near my family. It made my skin crawl. I realized something then, quiet and horrible. She didn't just leave me. She traded up to the person who always made me feel like I was almost enough. In the morning, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was careful, the way it gets when she's trying to prevent a storm by speaking softly. "I heard," she said. Of course she did. News like that doesn't walk. It runs. I didn't tell you because I wanted to, I replied. I told you because it's already everywhere. A pause. Then she said, Your father has his own way of justifying things. Justifying. That word was my childhood in a single syllable. I'm not asking you to pick sides, I said. But even as I said it, I realized I was, because silence would be a side. She exhaled slowly. He's been, different lately. Different how? Lonely, she admitted, and the confession sounded like a bruise. I almost softened. Almost. Then I remembered the way he looked at me in that kitchen, like I was the interruption, not the injured party. I'm not responsible for his loneliness, I said. I know, my mother whispered. When we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't drink, and I made my first decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to compete for someone who had already decided I was disposable. If this was a war, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. A quiet reclaiming of my name, my space, my story. And the first battlefield was going to be the one my father cared about most, how the world saw him. My father has always cared about one thing more than comfort, more than connection, more than anything else. Reputation. He built his life on it. 40 years in the same company. Rotary Club president twice. Church board member. The kind of man who shakes hands too firmly and remembers names because it makes him look principled. And now he was dating his son's ex-girlfriend. But in his mind, that wasn't betrayal. It was circumstantial. The following Sunday, I didn't show up for dinner. The Sunday after that, I didn't answer his call. By the third week, he escalated. He showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked softly and said, There's a man here insisting he's your father. I felt something inside me go still. Tell him I'm busy. She hesitated. He says it's urgent. Of course he did. It's always urgent when he's not being heard. I stepped into the lobby anyway. He stood there in his pressed button-down, hands in his pockets, scanning the room like he was assessing real estate. When he saw me, he smiled, not warmly, strategically. We need to end this, he said quietly. And what? This performance. Performance. That word told me everything. To him, my silence was theater, a stunt, an overreaction that needed to be corrected. I'm not performing, I said. I'm stepping back. You're making people uncomfortable. There it was, not. You're hurt, not I'm sorry. Not even, this is complicated, just people are uncomfortable. I folded my arms. Which people? He exhaled sharply. Your aunt asked questions at church. Your cousin won't return my calls. This is turning into gossip. I almost laughed. So that's the problem? You're letting it spiral. No, I said calmly. You created it. His jaw tightened. She's happy, he said. The simplicity of that sentence made my chest burn. She was happy with me, I replied. Until she wasn't. And now she's with me, he said. The possessiveness in his tone felt deliberate. Like he wanted me to flinch. I didn't. Instead, I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the faint lines around his eyes, the gray creeping into his hair. The subtle insecurity he masks with authority. You didn't win anything, I said quietly. That made him blink. I didn't compete, I continued. I lost someone who didn't respect me. You gained someone who doesn't respect loyalty. His face shifted. Watch your tone, he said. There it was again. That old hierarchy. As if I were still 17. I'm not a boy anymore, I said. You don't get to talk down to me. The lobby felt smaller. A receptionist nearby pretended not to listen. He leaned closer. You're going to regret pushing me away. I shook my head slowly. You pushed first. He straightened up, adjusting his cuffs like he'd just concluded a negotiation. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being done. That word landed differently than no. Done is permanent. Done is a door with no handle. He studied me for a long moment, searching for cracks. When he didn't find any, his expression hardened. Fine, he said, but don't expect me to sit around waiting for you to grow up. He walked out without looking back, and for the first time since this started, I didn't feel smaller. I felt lighter. That evening, I got a message from Claire again. He's really hurt, you know. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I cared about his hurt, but because I noticed something. She wasn't asking how I was. She wasn't acknowledging the fracture. She was advocating for him, as if I were the unreasonable one. I typed back slowly. That's between him and himself. She replied almost immediately. You're acting like we did something criminal. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I thought about the quiet nights we'd shared, the plans we'd made, the way she once told me she admired how steady I was. Steady? Maybe she mistook steadiness for passivity? Maybe my father mistook my restraint for weakness. They both miscalculated. I finally responded. You crossed a line you didn't even hesitate to see. There were 3 dots for a long time. Then, you broke up with me. I set the phone down, because that was the story she needed to believe. That timing erased impact. That technicality erased betrayal. But here's what neither of them understood yet. I wasn't fighting to get her back. I wasn't fighting for his approval. I was watching, observing, letting them settle into whatever they thought this was. Because relationships built on rebellion and ego don't collapse loudly. They erode. And when they do, I intended to be standing somewhere solid. Alone, maybe, but unshaken. And the first crack appeared sooner than I expected. The first crack didn't come with shouting. It came with a voicemail. It was a Thursday evening. I had just gotten home, loosened my tie, and poured myself a glass of water when my phone buzzed. My father's name lit up the screen again. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification appeared. I stood by the kitchen counter and listened. His voice wasn't steady. I need you to stop talking about this to people. No greeting, no warmth, just demand. I'm getting calls, questions. People are making assumptions. You're feeding it. I leaned back against the counter, staring at the ceiling. I hadn't fed anything. I hadn't posted. I hadn't vented publicly. I hadn't trashed him in group chats. All I had done was refuse to pretend. That was enough. The second voicemail came 30 minutes later. She's upset, he said. She feels judged. There it was again. Her feelings. Always her feelings. Never mine. I sat down at the table and let something settle inside me. A realization that was uncomfortable but clarifying. He wasn't calling because he missed me. He was calling because I disrupted the narrative. Without my participation, without my smile at family dinners, without my polite nod at gatherings, the story looked wrong. And he needed it to look normal. The next day, my cousin Mark called. Hey man, he said carefully. I don't want to be in the middle, but Uncle David asked if you've been telling people things. I haven't, I said. Well, Mark hesitated. Aunt Lisa said she asked him directly if he started seeing Claire before the breakup, and he got defensive. I closed my eyes. Truth has a way of surfacing without help. I didn't say anything, I repeated. I figured, Mark said. Just, it's messy. Messy. That word again. Soft language for sharp actions. That weekend there was a family barbecue, one I'd been attending since I was 12. Same backyard, same folding chairs, same cheap lemonade in a plastic dispenser. I almost didn't go, but then I realized something important. Avoidance would look like guilt. So I went. When I walked into my aunt's yard, conversation dipped just slightly. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough. My father wasn't there yet. Claire wasn't either. I hugged my aunt, nodded to my cousins, grabbed a soda, and stood near the grill like I'd done 100 times before. When they arrived 20 minutes later, the temperature shifted. My father walked in first. Claire followed. She wore a simple summer dress, smiling politely, playing the part. I didn't move, I didn't glare, I didn't storm off. I stayed exactly where I was. My father approached me first. "Glad you came," he said, like we were discussing traffic. "Of course," I replied. Claire hovered half a step behind him. "Hi," she said softly. I nodded once, nothing more. And that's when the crack showed. Not in me, in them. Because they were the ones suddenly performing. Too cheerful, too affectionate, too aware of who was watching. My aunt came over and hugged me longer than usual. "You okay?" she whispered. "I am," I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Dinner passed in careful small talk. At one point, my cousin's wife asked Claire how she and my father had reconnected. Claire froze for half a second. "It just happened," she said. No one responded immediately. That silence was louder than any accusation. My father jumped in. "Life surprises you," he said firmly, but even he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Later, I stepped inside to wash my hands. I heard voices from the hallway, Claire's voice, low but tense. "I didn't think it would be like this." My father answered, sharper than I'd ever heard him with her. "You knew there'd be talk." "I didn't think he'd make it so obvious." My chest tightened. So that's what I was. An inconvenience. An obstacle to comfort. I walked back outside without letting them see me. And in that moment, something shifted completely. I wasn't at war with him anymore. I was stepping out of his arena. Let them manage the whispers. Let them carry the weight of explaining themselves. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to expose. I was going to withdraw. And withdrawal is powerful when someone depends on your presence to validate their choices. That night, I blocked Claire. Not out of anger, out of closure. My father texted me once more before midnight. "You embarrassed her today?" I stared at the message. Then I typed back one sentence. I didn't say a word. He didn't respond. And that's when I knew. Silence was no longer weakness. It was leverage. And if they thought the hardest part was behind them, they were about to find out what it feels like when a son stops playing along. When I stopped responding, he escalated. It started with small things. He removed me from the shared family calendar. A petty move, but deliberate. Holidays I'd always attended suddenly showed as private events. Group chats went quiet when I entered them. Invitations became vague. He wasn't confronting me anymore. He was editing me out. At first I told myself it didn't matter. I was 42, not 14. I had my own life, my own apartment, my own routines. But blood has gravity. You don't just detach from the man who raised you without feeling the pull. 2 weeks after the barbecue, my mother called again. "They're moving fast," she said quietly. "Moving how?" "They're talking about selling the house." That caught my attention. The house. The one he bought 35 years ago. The one with pencil marks in the pantry showing my height at every age. The one that held every birthday, every argument, every Christmas morning. "He's always hated that place," I said. "No," she replied softly. "He's always hated the memories in it." That landed harder than I expected. Claire was 29, younger than I was when I bought my first car. And now she was walking through the hallway where my childhood photos still hung. Something in me shifted, not jealousy, not even anger, but clarity. He wasn't just choosing her. He was rewriting himself, and to do that, he had to minimize me. That night, I drove past the house. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it with my own eyes. The porch light was on, her car in the driveway. Through the front window, I saw movement, shadows crossing familiar walls. I sat there longer than I should have. Then the front door opened. They stepped outside together. She was laughing at something he said. He looked lighter, younger almost, and for a brief second something ugly flickered inside me. Not envy. Replacement. That old childhood feeling of never quite measuring up returned like it had been waiting for an invitation. He used to critique everything I did. Not harshly, just subtly. You could have tried harder. You should have thought ahead. Be smarter about it next time. And now he'd chosen someone who admired him without history, without memory of his flaws, without the weight of shared past. I drove away before they saw me. On the way home, I realized something uncomfortable. This wasn't just about a girlfriend. This was about identity. My father had always been the dominant presence in every room, the steady authority, the man people deferred to. And I had spent most of my life orbiting that energy. But orbiting isn't living. It's circling. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Not to sue, not to threaten, but to formalize distance. I changed my emergency contact, removed him from any decision-making rights, updated documents I hadn't thought about in years. It wasn't dramatic, it was administrative, and it felt powerful. That evening, he called again. I answered this time. "You've been talking to your mother," he said. "Yes." "She's upset." "She's allowed." He paused. "Why are you making this permanent?" There it was. He sensed the shift. "I'm not making anything permanent," I said. "I'm adjusting." "You're cutting me out." "No," I replied calmly. "You stepped over a line, I stepped back." His voice tightened. "You're my son." "Yes." "And that means something." "It does," I said. "It means you should have known better." Silence. For the first time since this began, he didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't correct me. He just breathed into the phone. Then quietly, almost defensively, he said, "She understands me." That sentence revealed more than he intended, because what he meant was, you don't. Or maybe you never did. I let that sit. Then I answered carefully. She understands the version of you that hasn't had to raise a son who questions him. He hung up without responding, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the injured one. I felt like the adult. But war doesn't stay quiet forever, and 3 days later, he made a move I didn't expect, one that dragged this out of private discomfort and into something that would force me to choose whether I was still his son, or finally my own man. He didn't warn me, he didn't call, he didn't send a message, he made it public. Sunday morning, my phone started vibrating before I was even fully awake. Notifications stacking up one after another. At first, I ignored them. I thought it was work. Then I saw my cousin's name. Then an old family friend. Then someone from church I hadn't spoken to in years. I opened social media. And there it was. A photo. My father and Claire standing in the backyard of the house I grew up in. The maple tree behind them. The same one I climbed when I was 8. She was holding up her left hand, a ring. His caption was simple. Life doesn't end, it begins again. Grateful for second chances. Second chances. Like the first one had expired naturally, like there hadn't been a sun standing in the middle of it. The comments were already pouring in. Congratulations. So happy for you. Love always wins. I stared at the screen, something hollow opening in my chest. He wasn't just dating her, he was marrying her. And he had chosen to announce it like a rebirth. As if I were the obstacle that needed clearing. My phone rang. It was my mother. "I'm so sorry," she said immediately. "You knew?" "He told me last night." "Of course he did. He said he hoped you'd see it as growth." I laughed quietly. Growth? That word again. "He couldn't even tell me himself," I said. "He said you'd overreact." There it was. Still the emotional teenager in his narrative. I hung up gently and sat at the edge of my bed. I expected anger. I expected jealousy. What I felt instead was finality. Because this wasn't impulsive anymore. This wasn't messy confusion. This was a decision carved in stone. By noon, my phone buzzed again. A text from him. I assume you've seen it. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just assumption. I stared at it for a long time before responding. I have. A minute later, I'd like you there. That one made my chest tighten. There. At the wedding. At the ceremony where he would stand beside the woman who once shared my bed. I set the phone down and walked into the kitchen. The sunlight through the window felt almost cruel in its normalcy. I poured coffee I didn't want. My reflection in the microwave door looked steady, older than I felt. He called an hour later. This time I answered. I won't do it without you, he said immediately. It sounded noble, almost sacrificial, but I knew him too well. He needed me there, to make it legitimate, to quiet the whispers, to show the world that everything was resolved. I won't stand in that room, I said calmly. You're being stubborn. No, I replied. I'm being consistent. He exhaled sharply. This is my life. And I'm your son. Silence. I deserve happiness, he said finally. I closed my eyes. I didn't say you didn't. Then why are you punishing me? That question landed strangely, because it revealed something important. He thought my absence was punishment. He thought my boundaries were revenge. No, I said quietly, I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. There was a pause. Longer this time. She didn't cheat on you, he said suddenly. That felt like a blade slid carefully across skin. You don't know that, I answered. She told me everything. I almost smiled. Of course she had, and of course he believed it. I'm sure she did, I said evenly. His tone shifted, defensive now. You broke up with her. And you picked her up. You don't own people. I never thought I did, I replied, but I thought my father had standards. The silence after that was different. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said quietly, You're not the man I thought you were. And that one echoed, because all my life I had tried to become the man he respected. And in that moment, I realized something painful and liberating. I didn't need his approval anymore. I hope one day, I said slowly, you understand why I stepped back. He didn't answer. He just hung up. That evening, Claire tried to call from a blocked number. I didn't pick up. Instead, I did something small but irreversible. I booked a flight, not to escape, not to run, but to build distance. If he wanted a ceremony that erased history, he could have it, but he would have it without me standing in the photos. Without my silence validating it. And when family members asked why I wasn't there, I wouldn't explain. I wouldn't accuse. I would simply say I needed space. Because wars aren't won with shouting, they're won with refusal. And the real battle wasn't about stopping the wedding. It was about deciding whether I was still defined by him, or finally free from him. And the day of that ceremony, something happened that neither of them expected. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was restless, because something inside me was already alert. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. at a small vineyard an hour outside the city. I knew the place. My father used to drive past it and comment on how classy it looked. Classy. I lay there staring at the ceiling, aware that somewhere at that exact moment she was probably stepping into a white dress. The image tried to form in my head. I let it, and then I let it pass. I wasn't going to fight ghosts today. My phone buzzed around 9 a.m. A text from him. Last chance. 2 words. No please, no son, just a final test. I didn't answer. Instead, I got up, showered slowly, and dressed. Not in something dramatic, not in black like I was attending a funeral. Just jeans and a navy sweater. At 11 a.m., I got in my car. Not toward the vineyard, the opposite direction. I drove north, no music, just the steady sound of tires against asphalt. About 40 minutes later, I reached the lake I used to visit as a kid, the one my father took me to when I was 10 to teach me how to be independent. I smiled faintly at the irony. I parked near the water and sat on the hood of my car, watching the wind ripple across the surface. At 2:57 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A photo from my cousin Mark. He didn't add a caption, just the image. My father standing at the altar, Claire beside him, guests seated in white folding chairs. There was one empty chair in the front row. I stared at it for a long time. I knew that chair. He'd left it there for me. A gesture for the audience. A visible attempt to say he chose not to come. It was strategic. But here's what he didn't understand. That chair wasn't empty. It was full of consequence. Because every guest who looked at it would wonder. And wondering spreads faster than explanation. At 3:12 p.m., my mother called. I hesitated, then answered. "It's done," she said softly. Her voice sounded tired. "How was it?" I asked. "Beautiful," she replied automatically. Then after a pause, "But heavy." I didn't respond. "He kept looking at the entrance," she added. That made something shift in my chest. Not guilt, just confirmation. "He made his choice," I said quietly. "So did you." "Yes." We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "He doesn't understand what he lost today." That sentence lingered long after we hung up. Around 4 p.m., I received one final message from him. No greeting, no anger, just, "I hope you find peace." It almost sounded sincere. Almost. But peace doesn't come from pretending. It comes from truth. And the truth was this. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted compliance. He wanted me to stand there so he wouldn't feel the fracture. And I refused. As the sun began to dip lower over the lake, I felt something settle inside me. The war wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet. It was boundaries. It was absence. It was letting him step fully into the life he chose without cushioning the consequences. But here's the part no one saw coming. 2 weeks after the wedding, she called me. Not from a blocked number. Not secretly. Openly. And her voice. Her voice didn't sound victorious anymore. Her name lit up on my screen at 8:17 p.m. No blocked number. No disguise. Just Claire. For a moment, I thought about letting it ring, maintaining the clean distance I had fought so hard to build. But curiosity is a quiet weakness. I answered. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end. Not dramatic, just heavy. "Hi." Her voice didn't carry that light, airy confidence I'd grown used to hearing when she stood next to him. It sounded thinner, like something underneath it had shifted. "I won't keep you long," she said quickly. I needed to talk to someone who knows him." Knows him? I almost smiled at the irony. "You married him," I said calmly. "You probably know him better than I do now." Another pause. "That's not true." The wind outside my apartment windows brushed against the glass. I walked to the couch and sat down slowly. "What do you want, Claire?" She exhaled shakily. "He's different." I didn't answer right away, because that sentence held layers. "How?" "He's intense," she said carefully. "About everything, about how things look, about what I say to people, about what I post." I closed my eyes. Of course he was. "He cares about appearances," I replied evenly. "It's more than that," she said. "It's like I'm always being corrected." Corrected. The word landed like a familiar echo. I leaned back against the couch. "What did you expect?" I asked quietly. "I thought he was confident," she said. "Grounded, stable." "He is," I replied, "as long as the world reflects him the way he wants." Silence. Then, softer. He talks about you. That caught my attention. What does he say? That you're stubborn. That you've always been dramatic. That you overreact. I let out a slow breath. The old script. He needs that version of me, I said. It helps him sleep. Her voice wavered slightly. He keeps bringing up the wedding, the chair, the way you didn't come. Because it mattered, I said. It embarrassed him. There it was again. Embarrassment, not regret, not guilt, just optics. He wanted you there, she said. Not because he misses you, but because it would have made everything look resolved. I know, I answered. She went quiet for a long moment, and then she said something that shifted the air between us. He told me he expected you to come crawling back eventually. That one didn't hurt, it clarified. Did he? I asked. Yes, he said you'd realize you were wrong, that you'd apologize. I stood up and walked toward the window, looking down at the city lights. Claire, I said slowly, what do you want from me? Her voice dropped. I don't know. There it was. The uncertainty. The first fracture in her tone. I thought this would feel like freedom, she admitted. Like choosing boldly. Like starting over. And now? It feels heavy. I didn't rush to comfort her, because comfort would blur lines. You made a choice, I said calmly. So did he. I made mine. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I replied. But you did. That hung between us. Unavoidable. And now? She whispered. Now, I said, you live with what you chose. There was a soft sound on her end, like she was fighting tears but didn't want me to hear. I miss who you were with me, she said suddenly. That sentence could have pulled me backward if I'd let it, but I didn't. You miss who I was before I saw clearly, I said. She didn't respond, because she knew I was right. After a few seconds, she said quietly, he doesn't like when I talk about the past. Of course he doesn't. The past contains context, and context weakens his version of events. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Another long pause. Because I don't think he understands what he lost. That sentence felt strange coming from her. I considered it carefully. He understands, I said finally. He just believes control is more important than connection. She went silent, and in that silence I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore, not at her, not even at him. I felt detached, like watching a storm from behind glass. I can't be your escape hatch, I said gently. You chose him. I know. Then figure it out there. A shaky breath. Okay. We stayed on the line for a few more seconds. Then she said softly, I'm sorry. This time, it didn't feel like defense. It felt like recognition. Take care of yourself, I said, and I ended the call. I stood in my apartment for a long time afterward, listening to the quiet. The war I thought I was fighting wasn't about winning her back. It wasn't about humiliating him. It was about stepping out of a shadow I'd lived in my entire life. And now, without trying, without attacking, without exposing, the cracks were forming on their own. Not because I pushed, because I refused to hold the structure up anymore. And I had a feeling this was only the beginning. 3 weeks passed after that call. 3 weeks of silence. No messages from her, no calls from him. And in that quiet, my life began to feel stable again. I started running in the mornings, not because I needed to outrun anything, but because the rhythm helped. Breath in, breath out. Pavement steady beneath my feet. No past, no future. Just motion. Work felt sharper too. Focused. I wasn't carrying that constant hum of anger anymore. Then, on a Tuesday evening, someone knocked on my door. Not aggressively, not urgently, just 3 steady taps. For a second, my chest tightened. Old instinct. I opened it. It was him. He looked older than he had a month ago. Not dramatically, just around the eyes. A heaviness where there used to be certainty. "What are you doing here?" I asked evenly. "Can I come in?" he said. The old hierarchy wanted me to step aside automatically. I didn't. "Why?" He swallowed. "I don't want to have this conversation in a hallway." There was something different in his tone. Not authority, not command. Fatigue. I stepped aside. He walked into my apartment slowly, glancing around like he was stepping into unfamiliar territory. Which he was. He'd never visited here before. I didn't offer him a drink. He didn't ask. We stood facing each other in the living room. "She called you," he said. Not a question. "Yes." His jaw flexed. "She told me." That surprised me. "She didn't lie about it," he added quickly. "She said she needed closure." Closure? I almost smiled at how neat that word sounded. "And?" I asked. He looked at the floor briefly. "And I didn't like it." Of course he didn't. Control slipping. Narrative shifting. "Why are you here?" I repeated. He took a breath. "She's struggling." There it was, still framed around her. "She thought this would feel different," he continued. "She thought people would understand." "Did you?" I asked quietly. His eyes flicked up to mine. "I thought it would settle," he admitted. Settle. As if emotions were dust. It hasn't. "No," I said. Silence stretched between us, and then, unexpectedly, he said, "You don't look broken." That caught me off guard. "I'm not." He studied me carefully like he was reassessing something fundamental. "I thought you would be," he said. "Honest, brutal, unfiltered." "I was," I replied. "At first." "And now?" "Now I'm not orbiting you anymore." The words slipped out before I could soften them. He flinched slightly. "Is that what you think you've been doing?" he asked. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "You've always been independent." "Not from you," I said. That landed. He walked toward the window, staring out at the city lights. "She doesn't understand me the way you do," he said quietly. There it was. The admission. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. "She never could," I replied. He turned toward me. "I thought it would feel like starting over," he said. "Like I could rewrite parts of myself." "And?" He looked tired now. "You can't rewrite a life without the people who built it." That sentence lingered. For the first time, this wasn't about winning. It wasn't about image. It wasn't about pride. It was about consequence. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to see if there's still something left between us." I held his gaze. "There is," I said. "But it's different." He nodded slowly. "I won't leave her," he added. "I know. I made a choice." "I know." Silence again. Heavy. Honest. "I don't expect you to approve," he said. "But I don't want you gone." There it was. Not command. Not expectation. Request. For years I had waited for him to speak to me like that. Without superiority. Without instruction. Just man to man. "You cross something I can't uncross," I said quietly. "That doesn't mean I disappear. It means the relationship changes." He nodded. "I don't know how to do that." "I do," I replied. He looked at me carefully. "You stop pretending nothing happened. You stop minimizing it. And you stop expecting me to protect your comfort." That one hit. He didn't argue. Didn't defend. He just stood there, absorbing it. After a moment, he said something I never expected to hear. "I'm sorry." Not polished, not strategic, simple. It didn't erase anything, but it shifted something small inside me. I didn't hug him. I didn't forgive him in some dramatic declaration. I just said, "I needed to hear that." He nodded once. And for the first time in months, there wasn't tension between us. There was damage, but there was honesty. He left a few minutes later. When the door closed behind him, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Because the war I thought I was fighting, it wasn't against him. It was against the version of myself that believed I had to shrink to keep peace. And that version was gone. There was only one conversation left, and it wasn't with him. It was with her. She showed up on a Sunday afternoon. No call this time, no warning. Just a knock I recognized before I even reached the door. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't hesitant, it was careful. When I opened it, Claire stood there without makeup, hair pulled back, hands folded in front of her like she didn't know what to do with them. "You shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "I know." That was new. No defense, no explanation, just acknowledgement. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Not inviting her in, not shutting her out completely either. A middle ground. The hallway smelled faintly like someone's laundry detergent. Ordinary. Neutral. "How is he?" I asked. She swallowed. "He's trying." Trying. I studied her face. The brightness she used to carry was muted now. Not destroyed. Just aware. "You don't look happy," I said. She didn't argue. "I thought loving someone brave meant it would feel brave," she said. "But it feels complicated." It was always going to be complicated. I didn't think it would cost this much. There it was. Cost. She wasn't talking about money or reputation. She meant the quiet things, the tension at dinners, the constant measuring of words, the feeling of being evaluated instead of embraced. "He doesn't like when I disagree," she said softly. I almost laughed, but not unkindly. "He never has." She looked up at me then. Really looked. "You know him in ways I don't." "Yes." "And you're still standing." That made something in my chest shift. "I had decades to learn how," I said. She nodded slowly. "I thought I was choosing strength," she admitted. "But maybe I was choosing comfort. He makes big promises, big gestures. It felt secure. And now? He needs admiration. Constantly. And if I don't give it, he withdraws. The old pattern. Reward and distance. Approval and correction. "I can't fix that for you," I said gently. "I'm not asking you to." Silence settled between us. Then she said the thing I think she'd rehearsed. "I loved you." Past tense. "I know," I replied. "But I don't think I understood you." "That's true," I said. She flinched slightly, but not because I was harsh, because I was calm. "I thought you were passive," she continued. "Too steady. Too predictable. And now? Now I realize you were grounded." That word hung between us like something fragile. She looked down at her hands. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I already did," I said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What?" "I forgave you a while ago. Not for you. For me. Because carrying resentment would have kept me tied to them both." "I don't hate you," I added. "I just don't belong in your life anymore." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't spill. "I don't think I belong in it either," she whispered. That was the first truly honest thing she'd said since this began. The hallway felt smaller, quieter. "Why are you here, really?" I asked. She hesitated. "I needed to see if I ruined something that could have lasted." I took a slow breath. "You didn't ruin it," I said. "You revealed it." She absorbed that, and I saw it settle. "I'm not coming back," I said, not unkindly. "I know." "And I won't stand between you and him." "I know." "But I also won't pretend this didn't matter." She nodded. It did. A door opened somewhere down the hall, a neighbor stepping out, life continuing. "I hope you figure out what you actually want," I said. She gave a small, sad smile. I thought I knew. We stood there for a moment longer, then she stepped back. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. She walked down the hallway without looking back, and this time I didn't watch her go with longing. I watched her go with understanding. When I went back inside, the apartment felt steady. Not empty, not triumphant, just mine. Later that evening, my father sent a short message. She told me she saw you. I responded with 3 words. I know she did. He didn't ask what we discussed. He didn't demand details. And for the first time, he didn't try to control the narrative. Months passed after that. He stayed married, she stayed. But something had shifted in all of us. He stopped lecturing, stopped assuming, started speaking carefully, and I stopped needing him to approve of me. We meet occasionally now, coffee, sometimes dinner. It's different, less authority, more distance. And strangely, more respect. The war never exploded. It dissolved. Not because anyone won, but because I stepped out of the battlefield. I didn't reclaim her. I didn't punish him. I reclaimed myself, and that turned out to be enough.